Welcome back to the Daily Close, and we have another TA video for you coming up. We're going to be covering Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a surprise coin, actually, one that we think has been performing in the market. But before we jump into it, please remember that this is not financial advice. Do your own research. This is more of a video to educate you guys on what we think is going to happen and how to do a little bit of TA. If you do like our content, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. That would be very much appreciated. And also, you'll be kept up to date with all the latest news and all the latest ongoings in the crypto space. So without further ado, let's jump into the charts. Let me share my screen real quick. I think this is the right one. So let's start off with Bitcoin. So just like in the previous video, I want to cover the high time frames and also the medium and the low time frames as well for you guys. And as I mentioned before, the three things that I look when we're looking at a chart like this is the three things are trend, momentum, and volatility. Now on this, we're on the weekly chart here for Bitcoin, and you can see we're putting a bit of a bullish, sorry, not bullish, bearish engulfing candle on the weekly here. I think that Bitcoin is coming down to potentially make a lower low. And if I put the moving averages on here, one thing that I wanted to make you guys aware of is that this blue line is the 21 moving average. So we're in a weekly time frame. We'd call this the 21 weekly. Bitcoin has in the past and has kept in a bull market, at least, has kept this 21 moving average as support on the weekly time frame. And you can see we bounced off pretty much perfectly here sometime this week. And if we go back in history, we can see a couple of examples where we've kept the actual 21. So here we have an uptrend. We break above the EMAs here. We come back down to test it and then continue the trend. And I think this is potentially what is happening right now, where we're currently at. It's very, very similar sort of a structure, just on a much larger scale. And if you actually see how much this went down by and tested the 21 weekly, that was a 15% drop. So, you know, pretty similar to where we're at now. I think with this latest retest of the 21 weekly, we dropped about, more or less 17%. So I think we're at a similar position. I think we're in the midst of putting in a higher low. If we do drop below here, well, I mean, we're currently sitting at around 45K. This is key support here. If we do fail to hold this, I'd look for a move back down to 43K, maybe even 42K as well, according to these moving averages. Something else that I wanted to show too is the pivots. Now I use pivots. I sometimes use pivots, not all the time, but here is a good example of, and I have it on the monthly time frame right now. It's a good example of Bitcoin bouncing off the monthly pivot. Now, if you're a trader, if you're an intraday trader or even a swing trader, usually the first test of the monthly pivot is a good place to potentially, go long. And you can see if you did long this pivot here, there was a little bit of a stop hunt going down in this wick, but it did move up about 5%. So that would have been quite a nice trade. So that's something else that I wanted to point out on the pivots too. If we look at momentum, we are playing out a little bit of bearish divergence here, where we've dipped below the sort of the middle of the range. I'd like to see us reclaim this to continue the bullish momentum. And this BBWP, as I highlighted last week as well, indicates volatility. We are moving up. So with this downtrend, with this retrace that we saw in the last couple of days, we did see an increase in volatility. Now, again, volatility is direction agnostic. So it could either mean a big move to the downside or a big move to the upside. Here we're seeing increased volatility to the downside. So what I'd really like to see is Bitcoin hold this level. I think it will. Potentially we're going to work back down to 42, 43K. But if we don't hold that level, that's where I would say that, that's where I'd say I'd get a lot more bearish. Let's draw a Fibonacci retracement on here. If we go down to a low time frame, we can probably get a better read. So I'm going down to the 4-hourly time frame. If we put a retracement on this last move down, you can see that we've been testing the 0.382. I would expect us to move back up to the 0.05 and the 618. And that's where I'd really be looking at Bitcoin to make a lower high. If it does make a lower high, that would confirm bearish market structure, and then that would also make me a bit more bearish on the whole market sentiment. I would ideally like to see us close above these previous highs here and resistance at the 786, which is around $50,600. If we do start closing even 4-hourly, 12-hourly candles above here, I'd be very confident in saying that we're going to move to new highs, new local highs on this. First target being around 55,500, and then eventually up to all-time highs as well. On the 4-hour, momentum's coming back up. It's bouncing a little bit, still in the bearish control zone. I would like to see it again get out of here and retest the middle of the range. Volatility has since the retracement, it has come down significantly, almost to a 0% read, about 3% read, which is good. We want to see low volatility when we are consolidating here, and then once we make a move back up, we want to see this volatility rise with it as well. So that's it for Bitcoin. I think my sort of opinion on my sentiment on the market is neutral in the short and medium term. Long term is looking pretty good. If we get on the daily, for example, if we get momentum increasing with a big price move up, that would be a very, very good sign. One last thing that I wanted to point out as well is that we do need to make, we have kind of broken and made a lower low here. And something to really watch out for is, if we're not able to close above this level here, about 50,000, that's the level to watch out for. But I do expect us to make a move up there, and then we'll see what happens after that. Okay, that's it for Bitcoin.
All right, so I guess I'll go. I'll cover Ethereum.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
Screen real quick. Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect.
Loud and clear.
All right. Great. So Ethereum, even before going into Ethereum, we know that Bitcoin is king, and a lot of things, all the altcoins typically follow suit. So we had that massive sort of liquidation event and a massive drop a few days ago, and we will do a quick analysis. I'm gonna go straight into the lower time frame, just because, in my opinion, it's a little more bearish, and I kind of want to end this on more hopium. So technically speaking, on a lower time frame, we'll look at the 1 hour and 4 hour. We have made lower lows, and again, even let me zoom in on here. The 1 hour, we made a lower low here. We're about 3170-ish, and previously we had about 3260. And so on the lower time frame, we've broken market structure. It's going to look worse if we don't go above about 3560. So in that situation, I think we might look at seeing more consolidation around this area, with potentially going all the way down to about 3000, and staying in this overall range. Now, I mentioned in a previous video that we had sort of an order block. Let me pull that up real quickly. Around this range, actually, it's probably around 100 to about 3,000-ish. This was the range that I had previously marked out, and even in this one as well. There are a few deviations, but if Ethereum does not make a higher high in continuation of this trend, then we're most likely going to see it consolidate here on this area. If we look at the BBWP, whoa, that is pretty bright. It's actually pointing downward, so we're looking at a bit more contraction, which is to say that it's more of a trend continuation than any other sort of potential break. I would say the same goes for 4-hour, but before I move to the 4-hour, I just want to look at the actual divergences. So hold on a second. Yeah, so if we look at the RSI, we already have maybe 1-2 drives of bullish divergence. And the stock RSI is actually pointing upwards, just above 50. Is that 50? About, yeah, sort of a neutral area. So on a short-term time frame, I think we can look to see this going more upward. But then I think, again, the main point is what happens after that. Do we make a higher high, or do we make a lower high? In that case, go further down into this sort of order block area. Now, I would say the same goes with 4-hour, so I'm not going to go too deep into analysis here. Only just one point to make is, again, for the divergences, we have, I think, three drives of three drives of bullish divergence, which is a very positive sign. We'll probably get more momentum and volatility going upwards. The stock RSI is pointing in, just bouncing off the oversold area. So yeah, it's going to start pointing upward, which is a good sign on a 4-hour. And as I mentioned earlier, actually, before I go into that, I just want to mark off the EMAs as well. I was looking at this, and again, it wasn't looking too good, just because if we look at the 55 EMA, which is this purple line right here, we've basically made a crossover, and after that liquidation event, and we're looking at potentially needing to gain a bit more consolidation and momentum to actually break past it and crossover again to do a bullish crossover. So that's not the most positive sign. We're hanging around here around we're below the 200 SMA and the 200 EMA on the 4-hour, and above the 377 EMA. And if it goes any lower than that, then it's not a positive sign. Yeah. So going further into more of a higher time frame, I think the daily, it doesn't actually look that bad. I think Bitcoin is looking more bearish than Ethereum. So a few points to make here. Technically speaking, on the daily, and these are key levels for the bulls, but Ethereum did make a lower low on the daily. So this one, we're at 3,190. And this last candle we made a low of 3,128. So technically speaking, we made a lower low. And this is where I think with technical analysis, we can't get too nitty gritty on the actual figures. We want to look at the overall structure, and then, as other TA technical analysts have said, this is more of an art. Because it's not made such a drastic downward, lower close. There is potential that I think Ethereum, in particular, with all the bullish news, can actually make a more of a bullish continuation. So, yes. Now, when we look at the actual correction that took place on September 7th, if we look at the BBWP, we see that it came down on declining volatility. Now, when on the BBWP, when there's declining volatility, this actually just means that we're looking for trend continuation, as opposed to a massive reversal, right? So it's not indicative of a reversal, which is to say we probably wouldn't expect this to go all the way down anywhere below 3,000. But because the close yesterday was actually technically lower, again, we're probably going to see some kind of consolidation here up until as low as maybe 3,000. Now, one other point to make is on the daily, when we look at the actual RSI, we have a few drives of hidden bullish divergence. I think on a previous video, I talked about it being like oversold, even though it was actually overbought. Hope I can make that correction. Anyway, so if we get a higher low here, then we're probably going to get one more. See, the dotted lines here is actually not confirmed yet. So if we do make a higher low, then we're going to see another drive of bullish divergence. And if that happens and we see a bit more upward movement, I would say until maybe around 3,800, then we'll most likely see all-time highs later this month or early October. Now, if we do not get that and it's invalidated, then we'll most likely see a lower low. If we do make a lower low further past this previous low even further, then we'll most likely see a movement down to 3,000 and consolidate more into this area. I do not see it going anywhere below 3,000 just because we've formed a strong base here. Yes, and just one last point on the momentum. Actually, I'm going to EMAs as well, but on the stock RSI, it is pointing downward. So we're probably going to see a bit more downward movement before we see any more upside. And just on the EMAs, we are above the 55 EMA, which is a positive sign. We're still in bearish. We're still in a very bullish trend. So that's positive news. I would say the same goes for the 2-day and again, maybe on the weekly as well. We're much higher than all the EMAs. So it's all positive. Ethereum, I think high potential for new all-time highs later this month, and something to look forward to. So yeah, that's it for me.
Cool. Thanks. So I guess I'll close off. Oops. I'll close off by talking about ALGO. So let me just share my screen.
ALGO's been a big performer.
It certainly has been. And, we've seen some pretty strong upward movement in the last few days, only to, I guess, see ALGO on the downside recently. So I'm actually going to look at it on the 4-hour and talk about what I see here. I think with ALGO, we were on the downside for the last couple of days to test our previous all-time high. So if I'm looking at what that is, it's actually at about 1.8. We can see that we've been on somewhat of a downward trend up until today. And our old all-time high has been a real major resistance at about the $6.86 mark. I think in order for ALGO to have as long and as a continuous run as it did recently, we would need to see some confirmation, or we needed to see some confirmation to show that we've broken out of this major resistance. And I think the good news for us is that we saw this today. So I think we have a lot of buy pressure and a really nice bounce that we see at the $1.86 mark here that confirmed the previous all-time high as our new support now. So after breaking this downtrend today, I just drew this line. We had a little bit of a trend reversal where we saw a downtrend recently. This bounce allowed us to break out of this downtrend. And I think it's what we needed in order for us to really test the new all-time high for ALGO. I'm just going to draw some fibs here. Just to talk about what we can expect in terms of movement for the next couple of days. So because we've broken out of this downward trend and because we've bounced off our old all-time high and turning that into support, I think we can set our sights on some pretty nice targets. What I'm looking at here right now is Firstly, testing our new all-time high. So we're looking at about $2.50. I think there are two outcomes that we can see in the next coming days. We can either go and test the $2.5 mark and break through it or not. And I kind of want to talk about what I would expect in the case of a bullish and bearish scenario. According to the fibs, I think the next mark we'd be looking to test is of course this new all-time high. But if we break through it, there's nothing stopping us from making it all the way up to 2.6 to about 2.9, I guess just shy of $3 here. So the other scenario that could play out is we could test this new all-time high and get rejected, but I don't think that we'd be going down any lower than a previous all-time high, since it's now become a pretty decent support for us. And again, I'm looking at the 4-hour here because the recent action has been happening in the last couple of days. For the stock RSI, what I can see is that it's currently in oversold territory, as you can see at the bottom here. And you've also seen a bullish crossover. So I think that there is some buying pressure. If you are looking to get into this project, I think one thing to keep in mind is, personally, I would wait to see how things go if we do test this new all-time high. But it also isn't a bad entry at the moment, considering that you're not too far off from our current support. The only thing that kind of concerns me right now is we don't have a lot of volume moving yet. So I think if we can get some volume back, then we'd be at a pretty decent place with ALGO. But at the moment, I would say that it's better to be slightly more cautious with this chart. And yeah, that's my take. So for us, I think one thing that we've been trying to do, and if you've been watching our videos recently, is that we've been trying to mix some content, adding in some technical analysis with our talk on projects. And that's something you can expect from us in a week. We plan on posting twice a week, every week. If you do like the content that we're putting out, please like, share, subscribe, turn on those bell notifications if you do want to see more of our content and be updated as soon as it comes out. The other thing that I want to encourage you guys is if there is any material, any projects that you want us to cover, or any parts of technical analysis that you'd like for us to dive into, please don't hesitate to drop that in the comments. And we might even give you a shout out in the next video. Otherwise, that's it for us today. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. May the pump be with you.
May the pump be with you guys.
Thanks for watching.
As always.
Thanks for
Thank
watching.
you.